Bruce here from S&S Cycle. In this video, I'm going to show you how to install the S&S Stealth 2 air cleaner for Indian Scout and Scout 60 models. The kit itself is pretty simple, and the most difficult part of the installation is removing the stock air cleaner. But fortunately, once that's done, you'll never have to do it again. So let's get started. I have the bike securely strapped down on a lift, but for the first part, it's easier to have the lift down. The air cleaner on these bikes is under the gas tank, so it'll have to come off. And in order to do that, I'll have to take off the seat. Lift up on the front of the seat to unsnap it from the fastener and pull it backwards to remove it. Since I'm working on the fuel system, I'll disconnect the negative battery terminal to make sure we don't make any sparks that could cause a fire. I just hate it when that happens. I need to remove the fuse box to get at the battery, but it's really easy to take off since it just clips in place and it just unclips like this. You may have noticed some extra wires that your bike does not have. That's because we've already installed a Dynojet Power Commander 5 tuner on this bike because we know we're going to have to tune the fuel injection system after we install this new air cleaner. A Phillips screwdriver is all I need to remove the negative battery cable. Don't skip this step. It's important for your safety. With the battery disconnected, let's get this gas tank off. The gas tank is held on the frame with these 4 bolts, so I'll use a 13mm socket to remove them. I'm lifting the rear of the tank to get at the evaporative emissions lines, the fuel pump electrical connector, and the fuel line to the throttle body. Remove the evaporative emissions lines from the rear of the tank. The fuel pump connector is located under the tank toward the rear. Just squeeze the connector here to release the latch and pull it off the tank. It's a good idea to have a rag handy in case a little gasoline drips out of the fuel line when you remove it. Lower the tank temporarily to give you some slack in the fuel line. The fuel line comes off the throttle body fairly easily thanks to the quick disconnect fitting. Squeeze the buttons on the top and bottom of the connector to release it and pull it off. It's a pretty tight fit between the frame and the wiring harness, so I'll need to push the fuel line back under the frame rail and feed it through here in order to get the tank off. Now I can pull the tank back off the rubber mounting bosses and remove it. Now I'm going to raise the lift to a comfortable height so we can work on the air cleaner. In order to get the stock air cleaner out of the bike, I'm going to have to remove these frame rails, and here's the correct way to do it. I put a jack under the engine from the left side. There's a brake line on the right side of the engine, so take care not to pinch it with the jack. I'm raising the bike until the rear tire is just about to come off the lift. These backbone rails are stressed members of the chassis, and by supporting the weight of the engine with the jack, I'm taking the stress off of them. If you don't do this, the pressure on the fasteners will make them difficult to remove and impossible to get back in. Remove the 8 bolts that hold the backbone rails to the frame and the mid-cast member. Start with a 13mm socket on the smaller bolts on the front end of the rails. Switch to a 15mm socket and loosen the larger bolts towards the rear, and finally the through bolts towards the front of the rails. If the fasteners are difficult to turn or remove, it means that they're still under stress, and you'll have to adjust the amount of lift you have on the jack. Clip the wire ties holding the wiring harness to the backbone rails and remove the rails. Loosen the large hose clamp in the front of the stock air cleaner assembly with a 1/4 inch nut driver. Remove the breather hoses from both of the cylinder heads. For this next step, it may be easier to put the lift down. Remove the stock air cleaner from the throttle body. It's a pretty tight fit, so you'll need to work it around as you pull it off. Now that I've got the stock air cleaner out, I'll remove the rear breather hose, which I'll reuse in the installation of the new Stealth 2 air cleaner. Now let's get the new air cleaner ready to install. First, I'll push this hose T-fitting into the hole in the bottom of the S&S air cleaner and I'll stick the stock rear breather hose on the rear-facing leg of the fitting. Install the straight hose supplied in the kit to the front-facing leg of the fitting. Since these are breather hoses, they don't have to withstand a lot of pressure, so I don't need to put any hose clamps on them. Hold the air cleaner in place and mark where you'll need to cut the straight hose. You generally have to cut off about 1 inch. Cut the hose off at the mark. Install the large hose clamp supplied in the kit to the boot on the bottom of the air cleaner. Now I'll reinstall the backbone rails and the fasteners. I'll start with the smaller fasteners and finish up with the longer through bolts. If the fasteners don't turn easily or are hard to insert, you may have to readjust the jack to remove any stress that might be causing them to bind. Tighten the larger bolts to 35 foot-pounds. And torque the smaller frame tube bracket bolts to 19 foot-pounds. Using wire ties, reattach the wiring harness to the backbone rails. Now I can install the air cleaner, and remember, I won't have to go through all this work again. The S&S Stealth 2 air cleaner can be removed and installed without removing the backbone rails. And since this is a washable filter, that's good news. Hold the air cleaner in place and install the breather hoses on the front and rear heads. Again, no hose clamps are needed. With a steady pressure and a side-to-side motion, work the filter boot over the top of the throttle body. When the filter is fully engaged with the throttle body, tighten the hose clamp. Slide the gas tank on the rubber mounting bosses and hold the rear of the tank up. A wood block may be helpful so you can work with your hands free. Snap the fuel pump electrical connector back in place. Reinstall the fuel line on the throttle body and reattach the overflow evaporative emissions hoses to the back of the tank. Set the rear of the tank down and install the rubber tank cushion and the 4 bolts that hold it to the frame. Tighten these bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Reattach the negative battery cable and clip the fuse box back into place. Now all I have to do is replace the seat and the installation is done. Okay, the air cleaner is installed. What now? To get the most out of this engine, a set of performance slip-on mufflers would be a great addition. But keep in mind that even if you don't install the mufflers, you'll need to recalibrate the EFI system. And for that, we recommend the DynoJet Power Commander 5 tuner. If I were to run this bike without tuning it, chances are it would run somewhat lean and tend to overheat. Drivability will be compromised and it won't make as much power as it should. It may even run the risk of damaging the engine. So the extra cost of a tuner is well worth it. We hope you found this video helpful, either for installing the S&S Stealth 2 air cleaner or just deciding if you want to tackle a job yourself or to get somebody else to do it. We would encourage YouTube viewers to click the share button, and if you'd like to see the latest S&S videos as soon as they're released, click the subscribe button to subscribe to the S&S channel. Thanks for watching.